Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the Red Raiders get the home monkey off their backs.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your first bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, kicking off another week. And it always feels good to be kicking off a week on the heels of a win. This time around, the Red Raiders get the home conference monkey off their back, so to speak. It only been 2 tries, but you had come up empty in both of those opportunities previously. You do not do so this time around against the Arizona Wildcats, as you really even stretch your legs a little before things are all said and done, and won somewhat comfortably. Prior to that, while you did maintain a lead for, 99% of the ball game, it was still a fairly tight, kind of felt like a back and forth ball game, Chris, but Texas Tech finds a way to hang on, extend a margin, and get out of here with their first Big 12 home win over the Arizona Wildcats. Not going to suggest it was always a thing of beauty, but as we have suggested prior on this show, don't care and won't apologize when it winds up with a win, right?
So you had a 2-0 week last week. Those are going to be hard to come by, and I think the common theme there was not only did you win, but both games were just kind of grinders, very difficult, nothing coming easy or anything like that. And I gather that that's just what we're going to get into here, and you just are trying to get a result, however you can get it, and. Grant, we'll talk about this game, but, Grant made the comment to me after when we were doing the post-game interview. I said I wouldn't have thought that you in Arizona averaging 80 points a game would come in and play essentially what was a rock fight today, like that old term where it's just kind of a grinder and all that. And he stopped me. He said, I think that because the conference schedule is now 2 games more, and it started earlier, and you didn't get the one warm-up game after you come back from Christmas, and you just jump right into it. And now there is no hey, you get a bit of a few days off, or you'll play on a Saturday and then you don't play again until the next Saturday, like a mini bye week, if you will. That doesn't exist for anyone. You're going to see teams kind of grind through, be tired, show up and just not have it because it's travel or the schedule or the pressure is just kind of caught up with them a little bit, and you're just going to get beat over the head. So this is this 10-week deal, and I don't know if that's what ultimately happened to Arizona and you were able to outlast them. But I think at that point, because you're going to show up one of these games and just really not have it together or just be gassed. Now that you're essentially playing 7 players, and one just coming off the flu, another one dealing with now a foot injury to go along with his ankle injury or whatever. But man, this was arguably your best win of the year, man. This is the first what is perceived to be tournament team that you've beaten, and the computers love this win. You moved up in the net from I think 19 to 15. Ken Palm, you moved up from like 16 to 13 or 12 or something. I mean, so the computers really like you.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear you say that as you gauge it against maybe a BYU win on the road. Do you think this one more valuable for the resume?
Yeah, because I think Arizona's better. And I think, and again, that will play out.
Yeah.
And we'll see. But again, yeah, it's maybe close. I mean, I'm splitting hairs in all those things on that maybe a 1 and 1A type scenario. And we'll see what that looks like as we go forward. But I think Arizona is pretty good. And keep in mind, man, BYU was never preseason top 10. Arizona was.
Yeah.
Arizona was arguably one of the hottest teams in the country, having won 8 in a row coming into your building, and you won by the one of the widest margins in the league over the weekend.
Yeah, the finish was a nice part of that to make it look that way and feel that way. And as you talked about last week prior to the ball game, they definitely look the part physically when you're seeing them on the floor. So early on was wondering how you would get it done, whether, competing on the glass or talking about some of those guards competing on the glass against Arizona's guards that were long and rangy, but you find a way to get it done and you finish with a 13-0 run. What did you say also, even a little more broadly, 16-2, 17-2 to finish a ball game? I don't think Arizona had a field goal over their final 6 minutes or so, had a couple of free throws, but there was a point at which 7:24 left, Chris, and Tech has a 1-point lead. And then you flip the script compared to where you were in a previous situation, and you make 9 free throws moving forward. I think maybe 8 straight at one point in time from various guys to help extend that lead. And defensively, you do some good things against Arizona. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about what we saw on Saturday, I guess really from both of these teams, is the offenses were certainly impeded. There's no question about that. But I'm kind of wondering how much you put that on the offense's inability to maybe do something here or there, or do you think that we saw defenses really forcing it to be that way as the game progressed?
I asked Grant the same thing after it was over. I was like, man, is this really good defense or is this bad offense? Kind of thing. And that's when he leaned into me on the, man, I think you see guys straining. I think you see guys, just kind of mentally exhausted because I was just not expecting to show up to the USA on a Saturday when Arizona was in town and for it to be a 40-minute shoving match. But that's what it was. I mean, it was that was actually a lot more physical than the Iowa State game, and I wouldn't have thought that. And I mean, there was positional size is something that Arizona has. They are on the all airport team. They look it. I mean, they across the board. They just don't have the shooting. They don't. I think that they're similar to Iowa State. Probably not as connected or not as much upside as Iowa State does from a guard standpoint. But they are as physical, as deep, as big, and all that. And like Iowa State, they want to get into the lane and not beat you with the three. They want to get into the lane, get downhill, put you on your heels, and get to the free throw line. But you did. You held them to three-point makes, I think, and all that. But you did. I do think you are getting better defensively. I mean, at some level, you start forcing these scoring droughts, even though you're going through some of these your own. I've never seen more scoring droughts for Texas Tech all season than we have in the last week. But they're both wins. So again, I'm not. Yeah, I'm by no means like. And I've already been texted, hey, man, should we worry about our offense? I'm not anywhere near that. I just think it's part of the dynamic of playing in the Big 12 and the grind that you're in the middle of. And you're just not going to be able to shoot, 50 to 52% from the field every game, like you did in the non-conference. And keep in mind, folks, you played one of the weakest non-conference schedules in the country. I mean, Ken Palm has it ranked 331st. So, I mean, so as long as you have some context, and then, you asked me about, BYU and that being a big win. I mean, you look up, they're 2-4. Yeah. They're 2-4 in the league. I mean, Utah has now won 3 games, and I thought Utah was like not very good. And all of a sudden they won 3 in a row. And so it's just the ebbs and flows of this league and whatnot. It's, you just take it with a grain, all of it. But I think your defense is getting a bit better. But your rotation is getting smaller, and we may talk about that as the week goes along a bit. But my favorite thing is
first, today's episode brought to you by Prizepicks. Testing your skills on Prizepicks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports and the best way to spice up any game, anytime. You think you got what it takes to win up to 100 times your money? All you got to do is select 2 to 6 players, pick more or less on their projected stats, place your entry, and boom, you're ready to roll. Prizepicks is not only the best way to get action on sports in most states, including Texas, but Prizepicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When the picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. With easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories, it's no surprise that Prizepicks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So get in on the fun and the winning and download the Prizepicks app today and use our code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play only $5. Again, that's our code LOCKEDONCollege on Prizepicks to get $50 instantly when you just play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. With Prizepicks, run your game.
My favorite thing is that you won this game because I do think at some level your defense is getting better, but you also won it without Darion Williams being much of a factor in this one. You figured out a different path to victory here, and the more paths you can find that get you to the promised land, the margin for error just gets that much bigger for you, and that's good because if it's just one recipe and you sprinkle in a little too much salt or not enough salt in there, then you're screwed. But now it's like, let's add a little of this, add a little of that, and now voila, we've got a really good meal going and all that. But now you've gotten to the promised land without Darion really doing anything and didn't play the last 4 minutes and 17 seconds.
Yeah, if it's the same thing over and over, the opposition is going to figure out how to attack that cornbread. And then all of a sudden your cornbread's offense isn't what it used to be. But we were hoping because of some of the talent we felt like you had in various spots on this roster that you could be versatile. And I think we've seen some of that so far. Now, also having these guys all show up at the same time in the same game and just load the bucket, that's fine too. We'll take some of that. But I don't know if that's all that realistic, but you have found some different things to lean on here or there to get you through a ball game. And one of those big things to lean on in the weekend's game was JT Toppin, who had his best game as a Red Raider, 20 and 16. He went, Chris, including 5 for 7 from the free throw line, which I enjoyed as well. But, Toppin, I said this word earlier in the season. I talked about how automatic it seemed like he was around the basket, and that word just came to mind again on Saturday, man. His ability to finish near or around the rim in various ways. I know he's got a couple of go-tos he really likes with the baby hook or whatever else you might put in that category, but his ability to convert a lot of different situations into two when he's near the rim has been a ton of fun to watch, man. And I really don't remember the last time I saw a big man I thought as offensively consistent. And I know he's maybe a little smaller than a prototypical big man, but you get the idea, front court guy. Be as consistent in getting buckets and finishing at the rim. A lot of time with contact where he's getting an and one opportunity, man. But what a day for JT Toppin.
Yeah, his words, and it's not a direct quote because I don't exactly have the words in the right order or whatever, but essentially in his words, it was like, yeah, God bless me with a lot of magic in this left hand. I'm like, yeah, that's well said. I mean, and to your point, I do think it was clearly his best game in 6 weeks, but you're right. It may be his best game since he's but when you consider opponent and context and all the things, but you could just tell he felt better. There was a little more pep in his step, and he's finishing with some of these hooks over like a legit 7-footer and in Henry Vasar, and the Arizona's other big who was like Traore at BYU, who JT had a problem with. But I was just really impressed because it was consistent. He had a pretty good start to the Iowa State game. He just couldn't sustain it. And then you mentioned he just kind of tailed off in the second half, and there were some free throw misses. Now, he did have a bit of an ankle issue at the end of the Iowa State game and all those things. And then we find out that he wasn't feeling great. But you could just tell a week later, man, bit of a cracked smile there, starting to let the emotions show through, and he should, because he was special and consistent. And again, there was a hook 10 feet away that he shoots that he just has to get enough arch over it, over the shot blocker right there, Vasar, in the last 3 to 5 minutes, I think, when you started that 17-2 run, I guess it was. And I just thought that's elite, man. I mean, that's just big time. And there's just something about a player that's just got some instincts and IQ. How much do you know? How much a little more extra oomph do you put on it to try to get it over the shot blocker? I mean, there's just a lot that goes into that, and there wasn't anybody to rebound in there if he misses it, but he drained it. But it was a lot of fun. But man, can we talk about the littlest guy on the floor at some point here?
Yeah, I'd love to. Are you talking about Elijah Hawkins?
God.
Mr. 9 and 9, 9 points, 9 assists. Didn't shoot it all that well, but what an impact he's making on both ends.
It is ridiculous. And you're right. I mean, I think that at the beginning of the conference season, his impact with his 3-point makes, now he's doing it, getting downhill and throwing up some crazy floaters and off the glass and ones. But his ability to understand what is needed at the right time. And then, I was able to interview him before I guess this Arizona game. And, one of the questions I had, for the broadcast, and one of the questions I asked him, I was like, okay, how many times as you've turned it on, how many times do you go through a game and you're surveying it and thinking, I could make this play and it may be a home run. However, I'm going to back off a little bit because it may lead to one of these turnovers that, because those are the decisions, a million of them in the game, that can decide it. Because if you throw that pass, it could be a dunk going the other way, and then it's just, if you're on the road, then the crowd's into it, your coach calls a timeout, it could just snowball on you, just one bat. But he hasn't made those decisions. And yet I feel like he's still playing at a high enough level to where he's still throwing some of those home runs, but it's like I don't want to say it's a sure thing, but he's just being really careful with it, but still impacting the rest of his teammates. I mean, it's wild. I think 46-5.
9-0 on Saturday.
Yes, and then 9-0 in the assisted turnovers against Arizona. And his team needs it. I was just like, in contrast, and we'll talk about Cincinnati in tomorrow's show, but you have like 35 more assists in league play than Cincinnati does. It's just like how much of a struggle can basketball be played compared to how easy you can make it at times. But anyway, smallest guy on the floor, man, and he is flourishing, and he is figuring it out, and it is a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, and I can trace the root of the offensive problem for him, only going 3 for 12 on Saturday, to a friend of mine, Chris, who I think had made a gentleman's wager that Hawkins was going to hit a certain scoring number. So obviously when that was placed, he had no shot to hit that number. So I'm blaming my buddy Fonzarelli, who I was talking to during the game. And as a matter of fact, I was in tears at one point in time, laughing so hard because Hawkins, I think, for 3 consecutive attempts, didn't even hit the goal structure. There's like 2 in the first row, and there were wild things happening. But shout out to my buddy Fonzarelli. Hawkins did not get to that 13. It was entirely his fault, but I just love his ability to choose a guy that for 3 straight field goal attempts did not hit the structure of the goal. I mean, not even a glance off the backboard. Nonetheless, shout out to the impact that he was making. And I want to get to a couple of other guys before we get out of here, Chris. Now, one thing I want to kind of compartmentalize, and we're going to get into this more on tomorrow's show as we set the table for Cincinnati. I want to get into a conversation regarding minutes, and it's going to involve one of these guys we'll mention here before we get out of here, in Christian Anderson. And when we're seeing him on the floor, who we are not seeing on the floor as things have continued to evolve as we get into this Big 12 slate. But I want to get more into that on tomorrow's episode. But whether it is Christian Anderson, Chance McMillan, we saw getting busy again offensively, that was nice to see. Or don't look now, but Federico squared, again, making an impact, Chris. These are guys as well that you couldn't have this result without their efforts. And some of this is becoming a little consistent, and it's nice to see, particularly for those 2 new faces in Anderson and Federico.
Yeah, Federico, I think, is a big reason why your defense in general is starting to get a bit better collectively. I think he's able to give you the 20 to 24 minutes a game. He's avoided, large in part, being in foul trouble. It's not perfect or anything, but like when you go, and I remember back in the summer, and we were talking about, all these acquisitions, and I remember somebody nationally saying, he's kind of a 4-4, maybe a 5-5 type player, and he had been at Pitt. And the guy says if he can go to Texas Tech and become more of an 8-8 guy, man, that's really helps out the entire situation. Well, that's exactly what he turned in versus Arizona, and I think about 22, 23 minutes.
4 for 4 as well at the free throw line.
Yeah, not on my bingo card.
Treat there.
Didn't have that one. Yeah, that's right.
That was nice.
But he's doing it playing through a shoulder issue, that caused him some problems at the tail end of the non-conference schedule and all that, when he kind of hanging on the rim and all these things, and it just kind of, I think that was against Oral Roberts maybe when that happened, and he had that double-double and a kind of one of his career highs type games, and he's kind of just really dealt with that. You could see the shoulder harness and all that. But anyway, you wouldn't know it because he just kind of shows up, he smiles, and then you find out, lo and behold, maybe you get more time with him. Maybe you get to grow old. Maybe we get to have 2 Christmases together with our man Fede. But he's just this is what is fun about a college basketball season, because what it is now is not what it was 6 weeks, 2 months ago. And I think that he's been a part of your growth and kind of you having to tweak and and some of it's out of necessity. You really had no choice. He had to be a part of what you were doing. And you'll see more and more of him playing with JT, I think, at times. But he certainly earned a lot of these minutes, and they're productive as long as he avoids those fouls.
And Chris, like I said, we'll get into more so the minutes conversation and kind of moving forward, what to expect and what we're seeing so far. But Christian Anderson, and this wasn't even his slickest effort of the season, but still just finding a way to make an impact. And man, I'm impressed by the impact, but obviously it's a little bit different when you're talking about a newcomer to this level and the moments sometimes in which he's making an impact. These are big moments, and I think maybe some of his background and where he has played and what context he's played, maybe that's helped prepare him for some of these things. But just another solid effort turned in by Christian Anderson.
Grant, because I'll say something. You don't want to get caught up in the moment, but, Grant said something after this game along the lines of,
First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app giving you everything you need for live betting, same-game parlays, and a whole lot more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com, and make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You don't want to get caught up in the moment, but, Grant said something after this game along the lines of, he is the best guard I have ever coached at this age, with all of what the understanding of what he's being asked to do. That's pretty lofty praise, but I will tell you, in all my years of doing this, I've never seen a player this young that, again, he makes plenty of mistakes, but there's just some things that he understands that you cannot teach, that the upside. I don't know if I've seen anybody come in here as a freshman that has more upside than Christian Anderson. I guess that's what I'm prepared to say. I don't know if it exists. Again, at this level, when you're a guard and the ball is in your hands this many times or this much, and there's just some IQ stuff or some subtle nuances that he's got to his game that it's just it's pretty darn fun. And I can't wait to watch to see where it grows from here. He loves being coached hard, and I think Grant does that. And I think Grant does that, which that should be a blinking red light. If you watch how hard during a game that Grant is on Christian Anderson, it should be a blinking, flashing red, whatever color light you want, and it should tell you how good Grant thinks Christian is. Because when you're really hard on guys, it can be one of two things. One, because they're a knucklehead. That's not who this is. But he knows how special he can be, and he's trying to, get it all out of him. And he's asking him a lot. And we'll get into kind of how some of these roles have evolved, because again, like the length of a college basketball season, this looks a little bit different now than it did 2 months ago, doesn't it? Especially with him. Yeah, I mean,
no doubt some roles maybe being more clearly defined as we get further into the year. If you have not noticed what we are alluding to, just another example of it on Saturday, maybe the most extreme example so far. A member of your starting lineup plays 5 minutes. Christian Anderson plays 34. So we'll get further into that dynamic on tomorrow's episode. And of course, we'll be getting ready for the Cincinnati Bearcats. And this one I'm ready for, Chris, as they come to Lubbock and make it tough on you, hand you an L at home last time around. So looking forward to this opportunity, and man, road warriors so far. So no worries. Leaving Lubbock, this has been smooth sailing up to this point. I think I saw first time since 1997, 1996 that you were 3-0 in conference play on the road to start a conference schedule. You may recall there was some fun basketball happening in that era. So maybe we'll replicate some other things.
That's right. But count me as plenty worried about the game versus Cincy. Yeah, I will. Yeah, but that's just what I am. I choose to spend my days on this earth just worrying about everything that I can't control. I don't know what's wrong with me, but that's what I do, man. And I'll live a lot less than somebody like my man Cowan, who's just like, man, he's just rolling. It's like, whatever comes my way, man, I got it. And not me, man. I'm like,
Sure.
yeah, I'm just fearful that everybody's about to pull the rug out on everything, that relating to life. So anyways, but yeah, Cincy will be tough though. And all kidding aside.
You're talking to a guy who's a few months shy of Irish twins hitting the ground, and you think I'm just rolling with, okay, yeah. Well, we got no choice sometimes. All right, Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoyed it, and looking forward to the next one. We'll get ready for Red Raiders and Bearcats as you are on the road again. So we'll see you then.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. From cold Cincinnati, we will talk to you next time.
Man, I mean, we're in vortex mode here in the LBK, a snowy LBK as we sit here today. So maybe another instance where you got to head north to warm up a little bit. They don't know what we go through down here in West Texas. All right. Thank you for being out there. Stay warm, stay thawed out. We'll get back for another one to warm you up by the lighted fire of Texas Tech basketball. And it is lit as we speak. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers for always riding along, and shout out to the Matador Mob. Hope it was a fine weekend for all of you. Thanks for being out there as well. Hit the show notes. Find the link to a free 14-day trial. It is your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time as always, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.